one of our guests at the CTO Summit yesterday morning. Philippe Herve is the Vice President for Solutions at SparkCognition. He's based in Houston. He's come down here. So we thought we'd have a little one-on-one chat and then engage them with you and for you. Philippe, welcome. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you so much, Tarek.
This is one of those power chats that we're going to have. Philippe, tell us about SparkCognition. What does it do?
So first, SparkCognition is a very young company. We're only 4 years old, but we are now about 250 people. And the reason for this growth is we have invented a technology that is revolutionizing artificial intelligence. So in a market which is very, very hot, that's artificial intelligence and machine learning, we are actually a very hot company in that very hot market. So right now we are growing at rocket speed, and we are trying to stay strapped to the rocket.
So when we talk about artificial intelligence, your insight has been there for a very long time. What is the adoption rate, the speed at which the oil and gas companies are actually taking it on board?
So yes, thank you. Good question. When you look at AI, it's been here for 70 years, since the 50s. And I've personally looked at it. I was a latecomer. I've only worked on it about 25 years. So, but if you speak about AI, some companies have really moved very quickly into it, such as Netflix and Amazon, on the digital companies that goes from business to consumer. We have the luxury of working with many industries around many markets, and it doesn't matter if we work with aerospace or manufacturing or oil and gas or healthcare. Everybody is complaining about how slow they are at adopting the technology. So really, this is a fairly new technology. I have a talk which I do on a regular basis, which is artificial intelligence. Is it time to try it again? Because everybody tried it already before.
So you mentioned yesterday that the number one most important thing that is impacting your industry is data and cybersecurity. Could you give us a deeper insight on that, and why is it so important at this point in time?
So, once you look at artificial intelligence, you are looking at a data-driven model, and it's important to make sure that your data, which is flowing, is protected. What we expect to happen is going to be attacked on what they call cyber crypto, which is, people are going to try to attack your computers to use your processing power to do crypto mining. And so this is the current trend, and we have seen a lot of isolated attack, which we believe people were testing their attacks, and a massive one's coming.
You mentioned that you were getting one attack a day. Now you're getting 1 million malware attacks a day, and the hackers are just deep in there. How serious is that, and how do we protect ourselves?
It is exactly what you said. There used to be a malware every quarter. Now we have 1 million malware per day. Even some of them are very similar every day. But you cannot use the same traditional approach, which was to send daily updates on signature on malware which have been recognized. So the only modern way to look at this is really to protect your endpoints with AI-based anti-malware, which are going to catch all the virus on day zero. 99.7% of them is what we are at today.
Oil companies traditionally have been extremely careful about putting their data on a cloud. Is that a safer place for them because they have so much enterprise data that needs to be housed somewhere, rather than being on a server in their own little environment? Is it better to be up there?
There are pros and cons on everything. In one hand, you say, well, this is my system, I control everything. And in your other hand, it's, I'm releasing that control to somebody else. So for some clients, it's going to be safer to be on the cloud because that's exactly what they do. For other people, they believe that they can isolate their data sufficiently to be more efficient.
For a lot of young people, the oil and gas industry is not considered sexy enough. So they end up with Google, Amazon, and so the best minds end up in Silicon Valley with those kinds of corporations. Number one, what's the oil and gas industry doing to attract the best of the best? And number two, are you guys a great solution as SparkCognition to be the intermediary bridge between the cool companies in California and before they become so big?
So, we do hire top talent at a very rapid pace for a small company. We hire today about 3 to 5 persons per week, and that's going to go even quicker during the summer. But if you look at the entire market, we are just in the noise. I mean, 3% per week is nothing. So there is a lot of talent out there which is trying to get captured by many different industries. And if I just looked at my kids, I mean, I try to get them into oil and gas, and they say, "Daddy, no, this is dirty." So yeah, there's definitely a reluctance in the young kids to come into oil and gas, but I think there is a lot of effort we have done as an industry. Things like drillingmatters.org and other effort by various corporations, which are really trying to show that without oil, a lot of the things we are doing today would not be possible. Our lives would be terrible.
With all this data, artificial intelligence, trillion-dollar industry, so much deep investment that is already there. So there are a lot of lobbyists and a lot of environments, there's a lot of protection. So money becomes the key driver. Bottom line, ROIs become the key driver. And that's fine, I mean, that's on the one side. But what about being stewards of the planet? What about developing the future? What about things like ethics and trust and values? Are the oil companies, generally speaking, responsible enough in some of those more difficult areas, the softer areas?
So when we look at the major oil and gas corporation, they are definitely in the profit-oriented business, and that may be a challenge for society in the future. When I look at the national oil companies, they're much more careful about making sure their people are going to stay employed and they are good for their countries. This being said, generally speaking, AI is going to optimize everything we do and take away jobs from everybody around. And we are one of the absolutely pioneer in AI. I mean, one of the leaders, if not the leader, in AI today. And so that's a discussion we have had many times in the office, and we're involved in many ethical discussions. What we believe very strongly is AI yes, it is a dangerous thing, but we believe that if we can remain the leader, we can actually control where the AI is going. And the AI will progress, will become very pervasive and be everywhere. But if we let group of people which might not be as well intentioned as we are to be the leader in AI, maybe that will not be good for humanity. So we are very optimistic. We think we can control it.
Okay, control. Control is a difficult word when you mention AI and control in the same phrase. And we can maybe program it and hope to have something happen. Just a last question, looking deep into the future. And deep in the future, the price of oil should come down to zero.
Yep.
And the abundance of energy should be out there for the benefit of humanity. And that may take 20 years or so. How do you see that happening? Are we ready for it? And what are the sort of things that we need to build today in our minds, in our children, and our grandchildren, to have a world where energy is free, water is free, and we live in a big, happy world?
Interesting question. Thank you, Tariq. It is very clear that life is going to become easier and easier, and we're going to get slowly most of the jobs, the way we know them today, are going to be replaced. So how do we get to this future environment? We are involved in a lot of ethical discussion and how to reshape the society with multiple governments. That's not one of the things that I personally work on, but I think it's a very, very important question. We can see ourselves being replaced as individual workers, and we're going to keep the creativity, the art, those fun things that we like to do. But at the same time, I was at a conference recently where the DJ was playing music based on AI. We had artists doing paintings and displaying displays based on AI. We had a magician who was, all of his entire show was around AI. So we are going to have to think very, very hard about what we want to keep for us, for the humans, understanding that AI is going to be able to replace pretty much everything we do.
And one of my last questions is to, we need young people within organizations as we look forward, digital natives, and you're obviously hiring a lot of those young people. How do we integrate future boards, leadership environments, leadership from the youth to great companies out there? What are the sort of things that we need to do to basically try and bring those young people in at a strategic decision-making level so that they can actually impact the future?
So let me maybe answer this one a little bit differently. If you look at the university, and I'm involved with quite a lot of universities, they pretty much all agree that the gap between the top student and the average student is growing. And every company is trying to grab the top students, which is probably going to be a challenge for the average student and the less successful students in the future on how they integrate in society. But so I'm somewhat confident that that top crop, the very top students, they are going to be able to rise to the top of the existing company relatively easily because there is a shortage of them and they're going to be sucked up to the top of the company quite efficiently. The challenge is not for those guys to come and become the next leader. The real challenge of our society is what do we do with the middle people and the lower end of the society.
Several people say that innovation cannot come from large corporations by themselves from within. It generally happens on the edges of the organization and then it's sort of brought in. Are you, as SparkCognition, that company on the edges of the organizations of these large corporations? And is that the solution for the great oil companies to accelerate their development and progress in the future?
I think we have moved from a world where every corporation was developing its own technology and becoming very, very efficient by working on one set of core engineering technologies, maybe. We are moving into a world where now it's going to be a lot more piecemeal, where there's a lot of outstanding technology created by many, many people, some of them internal to the large corporation. And the real challenge today is how do you get incorporate, identify first all the top technology and incorporate them for the grit of your company. I think that's where the challenge is.
Philippe, thank you very much indeed. You've been very kind. You were so insightful yesterday, and thank you for your time and for the lovely book that you gave me.
Thank you so much, Tariq.